At Auschwitz, our tour group was filled with the expected characters: Japanese tourists, parents teaching their children the dark sides of history, racism and its sister schisms, and families with feelings ripened knowing loved ones lay underfoot. Our guide seemed to have missed out on the irony of our commands: keep together, keep left, keep quiet, keep moving. Those words were probably said here in the 40s, but in German. Two of the group stood out: a lad, the obnoxious half of a couple, and an old man dressed in black with a brimmed hat and a fist-length beard, a Jew through and through. He was far from the only one. David's star hung around many necks. He was just the most obvious. Our first shock: the 50-foot pile of head hair removed from prisoners. We were stunned. None of us had seen anything like it. But our gasps of horror were interrupted as a phone rang and the lad answered, "Ollie, you tramp," followed by a pause and then, "Nah, mate, I'm on holiday, but she's taking me to some camp." Tuts rang through the group, and his girlfriend, embarrassed, tugged at his arm, and he, with all his charm and ignorance, said, "What?" surprised to look up and see faces wishing to chase him away. He cut the call and we all went back to staring at the wall of hair before us. What had been brown was now black, blonde now grey, and how much was there I couldn't quite say, but I can tell you what it was used for, as the accompanying documents attest that human hair was deemed best, for mattresses and such. The two that stood out earlier stood out again because they weren't looking at Hare Mountain. The lad had swapped the call for a text, and the old man was looking at the floor with one hand on his chest, taking a calming deep breath before staring out the window, eyes glazed, and I followed his gaze to see where prisoners held roll call for up to 19 hours in the freezing cold, sometimes barefooted. Everyone moved on to the next room except the three of us. The old man was miles away. While he was there I felt I had to stay, and the lad felt it was time to picture take, even though pictures inside weren't allowed. Come to think of it, at how many other graveyards do you see so many cameras out? The flash awakened the old man and brought a flash of pain to his face, which the lad saw before leaving, and as he walked away the old man and I were treated to the wisdom of his t-shirt, which had written on the back, "I got this from a hooker in Holland," and it had the graphic picture to match. Throughout the rest of the tour I could see others were robbed of the satisfaction of deeper empathy by the boy's constant distraction, except for the old man. He wasn't frustrated or ill-tempered, he was troubled by something different, something he remembered. We made our way outside and the lad left us briefly, with a "I'm going to get something to eat, babes," and I could tell she was as relieved as us. We went on into Block 11 where Zyklone B was first tested, and it still reeked chemical, a mini-hell, and I wondered which part of a soul a person would have to suppress to be able to gas fellow humans to death. I hated that room so much, and even more so as one man burst into tears before asking the walls why and leaning on them. But soon he'd be crying harder, because a little farther into the complex there was a small, dark place that punctuated all we had seen. In there, 2 human-sized ovens that are supposed to have disposed of 4,000 bodies a day. All you heard were sobs. Every face showed tracks of tears, and I thought there's a real reason to cry me a river. Stepping out into the light brought no respite, and who should we find outside? The young lad, food in hand, a greasy burger under a sesame seed bun. How was it, he asked her, and even if she could have found the words to express it, he wouldn't have understood. We made our way out to the last stop, the prisoners' quarters. The room had bunk beds and little more, so I couldn't have imagined the surprise in store that this would be the setting for the most moving part of the entire tour. The guide told us of living conditions, but we were all still reeling from the last room to take her words in, bewildered and distracted, except for the old man who was watching the boy from the corner of his eye, concerned. So my attention turned to pick up clues and hazard a guess at what was causing the old man's distress. The lad finished what he was doing by the wall and with a smile of satisfaction returned to his girl. And after a moment the old man shuffled to the same spot and I heard the muffled hum of a prayer. He stopped himself, pinched the bridge of his nose, so nearly overcome by something he had to compose himself. So when he stepped away I walked over to where fresh marker ink stared up at me, and it read, "Dave was here, 07. I turned to see the old man had rolled up his sleeve, tapped the boy on the shoulder and whispered in his ear, "Young man, you are wrong. This alone means you were here." And he pointed at his forearm. 6 tattooed digits, as faded as the hair, more shocking than the ovens. And it was probably the first time Dave could feel Auschwitz wasn't just a museum. Auschwitz was real.